Rock and roll. Got a couple coming in. Thanks for the response. We have a good one scheduled for today, friends. Let me go ahead. Aligning HR and compliance teams in 2021. If you haven't been on a Provider Trust webinar before, we do these monthly. They're good for CEUs. So certainly we will make sure we send out CEUs as fast as possible after the webinar today. And this is just our monthly education series that we use to educate so many of our friends in our network. So we typically like to start off the year. This is our first one for the year of aligning HR and compliance in the year ahead. And golly, what a year it has been since the last time we did this in 2020. Last time the deck looks a little bit different today than it did just a year ago. But we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to keep us moving. We're grateful you're here, and if you've got questions, feel free to type it in the chat, and I will make sure they get facilitated to our presenters as fast as possible. Our presenters today, I'm so excited to introduce Donna, who many of you know and love. She is our Chief Compliance Officer at Provider Trust, has a storied background in post-acute and in a clinical setting, and then certainly has served as our Chief Compliance Officer for the last several years, helping us transition both from provider and then into vendor. So she's got such a unique perspective, especially in these times, to be able to deliver really good insight. And then Emily Grace, who is on our client success team. She was such a perfect choice for today's session, given her background and her experience working with many of our partners and friends across the industry, large health systems, and being able to aggregate what are we hearing in the industry so that we can deliver best practices to you and to everybody else on the call. So excited to have both of them today, and I promise I will stay quiet and let the two of them do most of the talking today. If you don't know who we are, we're Made with Love in Nashville, Tennessee. Again, we have got so much on our website, providertrust.com, in terms of free content and resources. We do our best to be an educational brand, to deliver insights and knowledge directly from healthcare organizations as we hear it to you all. So if you're ever in need of content resource or something to help your team get through the next couple of weeks, certainly give us a look at providertrust.com. What we believe very simply is that a smarter healthcare makes a safer healthcare. This is what we preach as an organization. And the tagline there is, from everything from healthcare license verifications to OIG exclusion checks and everything in between to everything beyond to ensure total enterprise compliance. We love to make sure that we can protect patients and do so in the most efficient way for all of our clients. Today's agenda, and then I'm going to stop talking and let Donna take it over because I know that's why everybody joined. We're going to go through 5 sections today. The first is a continued COVID-19 response, what that looks like. We know everyone is managing this in different ways. We're all going through the same sort of global experience, but gosh, if we aren't living individual experiences all at the same time. And so conscious of that, we're going to talk about what that is looking like and how to connect HR and compliance as it relates to the continued response. Vaccine management, distribution, and incentives. We've got literally data from today that we're able to share with you and some of the stuff that we're seeing in the industry and hearing from some of our clients and partners as well. Continued staffing challenges and some considerations for how to do that really effectively as we connect HR and compliance into 2021. Continued state of emergency. We'll breeze through this really quick, just whenever we have the ability to make sure in real time, whoever is on this call is informed appropriately that we can do that. And then connecting HR and compliance and a couple of key takeaways. So excited, we've got a packed agenda. So I will keep it moving. And with that, I will turn it over to Donna to kick us off with a continued COVID-19 response. Donna?
Thanks, Dave, and welcome everyone to 2021 and our new year, and another opportunity to share hopefully a few nuggets of information and bring some great people together today. So as we look at HR and compliance and the relationships and our roles, as Dave mentioned, prior to joining Provider Trust, I was Chief Compliance Officer for a large provider. And so I've sat in your shoes, and I know that on any given day, our role feels and looks different. But certainly right now, as we're coming into 2021, there's certainly no shortage of change right now. So thinking back on 2020 and looking at 2021 and looking at all of our new responsibilities under COVID and just the changing regulations, changing the way that we provide care to our patients each and every day. And how are we really managing that, right? How are we partnering with those important people within our organizations? And in this conversation today, we're going to focus on HR and compliance, but I think we would all agree that it's really a partnership across the entire organization. And how are you bringing people together and meet different folks within the organization, different needs that each one of them have? But as I look at the changing roles and looking at some of the statistics, as Dave mentioned, even as current as today, I look at some of the information and we talk about that one out of every 9 American workers are in the healthcare space. So think about the number of people that we're managing within our organizations. And as that number is growing and changing, and we have turnover in our organizations, we're going to talk about some of the statistics of the volume of people that are having to work overtime. And all of that means that each one of us has to ebb and flow on any particular given day. So Dave, if you don't mind, let's go to the next slide and really just talk just very fundamentally about HR and compliance and collaboration, right? We know traditionally our friends in the HR department are all about recruitment and coordination of all of these practitioners and making sure that the people are properly licensed and making sure we're getting them onboarded properly. Now, today, we're talking about health screening, right? In this COVID world, depending on what state you're in, depending on what type of healthcare practitioner or provider you are, what does health screening look at? How often are you giving COVID tests? Are you doing temperatures every single day? That's not an HR only responsibility, right? That's across the entire organization. Emily Grace was sharing earlier with us that one of our provider partners is doing that in their parking lot with their non-practitioners trying to just do temperatures and that sort of thing, right? That's traditional. There's no such thing as traditional anymore. Now it's crossing all sorts of roles. Our clinical team, here they are sitting in the middle of HR saying, hurry, here's these new people. Clinical saying, we need more. Compliance is over here saying, yes, but here's all these regulations that we have to follow. And did you check all these boxes? And, we compliance folks, we like our checklists and we like to follow all the rules. But in this new era, and it's not even new anymore, right? We're in another 9-10 months of what the new normal or less than normal looks like. But we have to keep changing, and that collaboration and thinking about how do we work together and share information, and maybe our check boxes and aren't boxes anymore. Maybe they're ovals, and maybe they're fuzzy and they just don't look the same. And the importance of communication and collaboration between all of these groups, and you could add on finance and operations to those discussions as well, right? There's so many different facets. So this is probably what we think is traditional, but certainly not the minimum, I guess we would say. Let's look at the next slide. We talk about this a lot. We see this vernacular of our healthcare heroes, and we talk about how are we supporting the mental health and all these different components. And I was looking at some of the statistics and the volume of people that we all know today, right? When we talk about 9 out of every 10 staff members have been asked to work overtime. Think about that. 9 out of every 10 of your employees are working overtime. So when you look at this, how are we supporting our healthcare heroes in our organization? Our roles in trying to find new ways to incentivize them, to motivate them, just to take a step back and see what their emotional needs are more important than ever. And so again, when we talk about HR and compliance, I think sometimes we have to take those hats off and just say, we as leadership, how are we working together to support these needs? And in the next section, we're going to talk really explicitly about the current state of vaccines and that sort of thing, and some of the collaboration and the interesting things that organizations are doing to kind of educate. So I'll save that for that next section, Dave, if we want to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and just to jump in and give Donna a chance to catch your breath a second, what we wanted to do is certainly give you at a high level our point of view in so much of the education that we deliver. is to connect HR and compliance, because we see firsthand every day with large health systems and with small clinics that the relationship between those two departments continues to be fruitful, not just for the internal operation of an organization, but fruitful for the patient as well. So we continue and we talk a lot about this, but given the uniqueness of where we are today at this point in the year and the current topics, we wanted to spend a minute on what we are hearing and seeing, both from those that we are close to and from a macroeconomic perspective as well, as it relates to vaccine distribution management and how some healthcare organizations are handling that. So Donna, I'll kick it back to you.
Thanks, Dave. And thanks for letting me get a drink of water and take a deep breath. Appreciate that. So we have a couple of statistics that, as Dave said, just came out yesterday, today, within the last week or so. This one is explicitly related to skilled nursing, but I think many of us in all different provider settings are seeing the same sort of trend. When we talk to our clients and when we just look at these statistics and we say, for your policy within your organization, how are you encouraging staff to get the vaccine? One of my colleagues, a friend of mine in their organization, they are requiring their staff to get the vaccine. And if they don't get the vaccine and they get sick, they're not paying them for the time off if they get COVID. So we're not seeing that a lot, only 2%, but there is a proportion of providers who are choosing to go down that route. I think the center bar, that 86 or almost 87%, are encouraging and incentivizing. And when we talk about like, what does an incentive look like? I was reading an article yesterday, I think, and I was just really motivated, I guess, or encouraged. One of the incentives that for this particular nursing facility, they're giving thank you notes that are handwritten thank you notes from the residents of the nursing home to the staff members who are receiving the vaccine. I just thought that was a really creative way to say to the staff, like, we really appreciate you getting the vaccine. All the residents in our nursing facilities, right? We know that today they're not having visitors. Their family members aren't allowed into the facility. And that's not going to change until the staff members and the residents are all vaccinated. And unfortunately, a lot of the regulations, right, loosen up to allow those visits. So I just thought that was a really creative way to really hopefully encourage and to thank the staff. And then 11% are really saying it's kind of up to you. I venture to guess that number, that 11%, is going to go down to almost zero in the coming weeks, because we're seeing all sorts of encouraging ways to kind of reach out to our staff. There's articles upon articles of one-on-one conversations of polling our staff to say, what are you afraid of? You know, what is it, so that we can personally help you get over that. And we have a slide that talks about like the what ifs and what are we hearing, but I think it's appropriate to just even talk about it here and being able to say, when you're sitting down in some of those creative ways of helping people get past the false information, everything that we're reading and seeing and talking to folks about is absolutely positively giving them peace of mind, letting them talk to medical directors, to different physician groups. Maybe it's a colleague, those sorts of things. So we'll go into a little bit more detail, but I think this slide is pretty indicative of what we're seeing in the industry.
And Donna, I'm so glad you said that. And 2 quick points while we go to the next slide is point 1. I dropped this in the chat, but if you've got creative ideas around this or things that have you're rolling out at your organization, we'd just love for you to share. So drop them in the chat. I know that part of what we are really making a move towards in these sessions are allowing for attendees live to chat with each other and share some best practices along the way. So by all means, if you have an idea or you have something that you've heard worked well, we are all in this together, friends. So feel free to drop it in the chat, and if you're willing to share, and no pressure to do so. The second piece is I'm on this call strategically because I am our director of marketing, and it's been really interesting to partner with HR and compliance teams in a different capacity to understand messaging and how to market internally to motivate our teams and staff, and some of the messaging around it too. So perhaps so much of today is based around connecting HR and compliance, but perhaps a connection to your marketing team as it relates to internal branding and maybe some internal education for your staff might not be the worst idea in the world to connect with your marketing team. Back to you, Dana.
Great ideas, and thanks, Dave. So this is a graph that was just produced today in an article that we were reading, and we thought it was super timely. And I think it's important for us as we look at, the first set of healthcare providers really getting the vaccine right started in the post-acute world. And as of 4 o'clock yesterday, there were 2.73 million doses administered, with 2.47 million people in facilities having received one or more doses. I think it's important to highlight on this particular slide, and the information that we're starting to see is as what we're calling, or the post-acute world is calling, clinics, right? The vaccinations are coming. There's clinics that are being held at the nursing facilities, and people have to register. The residents, the patients within the nursing facilities, are well over 90% in getting the vaccine. The staff members were well below 50%. But as we're seeing over the last couple of weeks, and as you can see in this graph, it started out, there was a huge disproportion between the volume of residents, and those are those purple graphs on the top and on the right side. The disproportion between residents and staff were significant in the first dose. And as we're seeing in the second dose, it's coming closer and closer together. And I really think that speaks to the confidence that the staff members are starting to see as more and more vaccines are given, that people aren't getting sick. And some of those things that they were afraid of aren't really happening. And then as the marketing, like Dave's talking about, and the work that the facilities are doing with their staff to say, hey, here are the facts. What were you concerned about? What are you concerned about? They're bringing in additional resources, and they're really helping people understand and feel well supported. And I think we're going to see those numbers go up and up. Another interesting piece of information that I saw, and one of the providers we're using, is that if you're a young person, if you're in your 30s and you're in a nursing facility today, you can get that vaccine today for free right now. If you choose not to get that vaccine and you wait for your group to be eligible again, it will be months and months and months before you're likely able to get this vaccine. So really trying to encourage our younger generation of healthcare workers to realize that this is an opportunity for them to really support and help the patients that they're caring for each and every day. So kind of a real-time graph that we thought was very informational.
And Donna, I wanted to jump in because we had a couple of questions come in from the audience that really have to do with the same general topic, which is is it possible to require this? What does it actually mean to require this, and how does that relate back to labor law, employment law, and can you do so in a post-acute setting? So I know, as a general disclaimer, we are not attorneys, and so this isn't legal advice, but I'm wondering if you could speak maybe a little bit to that.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the name of the person. Hello, Miriam. It's nice to see you. I think that I would say there's no way that you can require it. I don't believe, and again, as Dave said, we're not providing legal advice, and this is just my opinion. You can modify the benefits from what we're seeing from some of the providers, but to require someone and say you now can't come to work, I don't believe that that's something that you can do at this point.
And I would echo that just from what we are hearing from. We certainly have many labor lawyers in our network as well. We're hearing very similar things, but certainly it's an evolving topic. We'll actually make sure that this continues to make its way into our content and webinars moving forward, just so you guys have as current as we know the information that we're hearing, both from the market and from the legal side as well.
Great questions. All right, I think we can go to the next slide and talk just a little bit about what we're seeing in relative. And I think this would be a great place to use the chat as well, because I think what you're seeing as pushback from the employees in your organizations, or if you're in the post-acute world, from the residents in your facilities, certainly what we're seeing the most and hearing the most about, I think, is misinformation, fearful of the unknown. Those are things that each one of us are living through in our own life. And I shared this example with our team the other day. Someone who's very near and dear to me is in a phase of life where trying to get pregnant, and all of a sudden has the opportunity to get the vaccine quicker than what they thought because of the role that they play professionally, and had 24 hours of fear and tears and trying to figure out, like, am I making the right decision? And thankfully had healthcare practitioners in our circle that we could speak to and really give confidence and comfort to that person to be able to make an informed decision. And I think that's really what's important, right? Is understanding what the individual needs are. And there's an article, and a healthcare provider, or yes, Care Springs Healthcare Management, they're a regional provider in Ohio and Kentucky, shared some really great information in an article about some of the things that they're doing. And one of the things I thought was interesting in one of the facilities is they met with their leadership team, understood the concerns of the leadership team, dealt with those issues first, so that the leaders in the organization could then reach out to all the team members that fell under their direct support, right? And then they actually had a sign-up sheet that was visual, so that all the leaders in the organization, as they're signing up to get their vaccines, people could see that they were getting it. So by the time the second clinic was happening, and not the second dose, but the second round of the first dose of the vaccines were coming, they saw that people had already gotten the first vaccine and were working. Everything was fine. They were feeling good. And they could see those names and say, okay, well, if Sally did it, I feel really comfortable about doing that. I'm going to do that too. And they saw the sign up rate and the commitment rates just skyrocket. And again, I think it's really important that we deal with that fear of the unknown. And I think you can talk about incentives, and I think town hall meetings are important, but I really think when it all boils down, each one of us has our own fears, that we have to be convinced that it's for the greater good. And it's okay for me to take this step into maybe what is a little bit scary and unknown.
That's really well said. And I know we got to move forward, but I wanted to reference Ronald just sent in a chat of something that taking the concept that is here of town hall meetings and making it very specific to say something that they're doing is holding regular virtual town halls with infectious disease experts to discuss questions and provide up-to-date information. I mean, we're seeing that with our friends across the street. Meharry Medical Center had or Medical College rather, they've got a webinar today with Dr. Fauci, and just to bring national voices into their community and into their employee base to better educate. So that's a fantastic idea, and I know local staff, national experts, but also local it's just a great suggestion. So I know we got to move to keep us moving. Staffing challenges. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Emily Grace, who's going to just talk at a very high level about what we're hearing in the market, and potentially some solves about how we're hearing health systems solve some of those problems.
Hi, everyone. As Donna mentioned, we hear time and time again with people who we have relationship with just how much staffing is impacted by the state of the world at this moment. Like Donna mentioned, a partner who we work with mentioning that their HR and IT teams were helping with taking temperatures and doing patient intake out in the parking lot. Certainly we're seeing that people are having to put their day-to-day job on the back burner to help with things that are pressing and feel like a fire right now. So, we know there are a number of factors right now affecting these staffing challenges during this time, but a few that I want to highlight, especially with surge capacity. We did an interview with Dr. Marty McCary last spring from Johns Hopkins. And if you've not seen that webinar, I highly recommend referencing it. It was a great resource as he talked about preparing for surge capacity during the first, second, third wave. Definitely good insight there from him. PPE access for providers. And this is a concern for employees and the employers of just trying to make sure that everyone has an understanding of what is and is not available, and really does require HR and compliance to be on the same page with what's available. So as new staff are coming in, whether that's agency staff or new hires, whoever's coming in, so they understand what's available to them. And two other things that I think are really important on this slide. with the state board waivers and license portability, really ensuring that your license monitoring process is able to keep up with the changing board statuses that we're seeing. A lot of boards are amending their expiration dates and extending them. So making sure that whatever process you have in place is able to keep up with those changing regulations so you can keep the best people on the floor providing care and making sure that they have the licensure to do so. And then that kind of leads into the credentialing bottleneck. Again, another really important opportunity for HR and compliance to be in lockstep with each other to ensure that you're quickly getting people through credentialing, making sure that they have exactly what you need and have that licensure check, the exclusion monitoring, everything that compliance needs, that HR is ready, so you get that person on the floor and helping as quickly as possible. Just to help with the influx of patients and what you're seeing. I think it just really highlights the importance of these two departments working closely together to make sure we have the right people on the floor.
Absolutely, well said. And then just to keep us moving, continued state of emergency, and make sure you certainly know this. But what we wanted to do is really aggregate primary sources and give you a bunch of links. So when you get the slides later this afternoon, you've got the right primary source links to a bunch of different things. So it's ironic because we are in the business of primary source interpretation and monitoring. Sometimes, especially over the last year, we found it is much more valuable to just get the primary source and not have to deal with interpretation. And so from us to you, we've got a bunch of links that are just primary source material from a couple of different places. So if the first one is just to say this explicitly, the public health emergency has been extended through April 20th of this year. Certainly, it has been an active administration in the White House over the past 2 weeks. We've got all of the links to all the executive actions, certainly that impact potentially our worlds and what that actually means. Link there for your interpretation and to have right at your fingertips. A couple of things that are worth calling out with the public health emergency extension is we continue to see just fraud and abuse enforcement discretion and how that's playing out in a couple of different capacities over the last year. That's a webinar for a different day. It's not for today, but if that is, especially for the compliance folks on the phone, going into the third bullet, right, with state medical board updates and some of the things that are changing so quickly, some of the enforcement patterns are also changing quickly as well. So as it relates to monitoring and staying current with federal and state legislation, understanding how the enforcement's changing as well is a critical topic. We'll certainly cover that in content down the road at a later date. And then to bring us home, connecting HR and compliance. I know Emily Grace is going to get us started, and then Donna will wrap us up.
Absolutely. So I want to share our 3 C's for success, and we will break down each of these. Collaboration, coordination, and communication. I'm really thinking that these are the 3 things you need to consider as you think more about how your HR and compliance teams are aligning. So want to talk about the collaboration. This is, as we've talked about throughout this whole presentation, it really is key that these teams are collaborating together and working alongside each other to ensure that you have the best processes in place. And, collaboration between these 2 teams is key generally, but especially during COVID-19 with just the extra steps that need to be taken now, the extra stress and pressures that are in place. Considering what your meeting cadences are between HR and compliance. Is there a regular touch base? Is there a landing zone where there's shared resources between the teams with all of the tools that they need, access to the same information? And are you meeting on that to discuss that? Really thinking of what comprehensive approach can be taken and put into place now. While times are kind of crazy, but will set you up for success when hopefully this starts dying down and is less of a fire and more of just how can these teams work together ongoing to set our organization up for the best success and make sure that we are prepared to take care of our staff and our patients.
Donna, go ahead and bring us home.
All right, we'll get through these super quick. Communication is essential, right? I don't think any one of us could argue that fact when we're talking about the volume of people coming into the organization and really making sure that people are apprised of the resources that are available to them, just making sure they know what protocols are within the organization. As we see temporary agency staff coming in and people just new hires and new hires. I was looking at some statistics that said hospitals have gained 31,000 new employees in this last year. So you think about that. Those are full-time people or not even the agency staff. So communication is essential between all the teams and with all of our employees and team members. And then we talk about coordination on the next slide. And we think about how do we coordinate between our teams, the leadership, even at Provider Trust, right? We support all of you. We're not on the front lines today taking care of patients, but we have a COVID team within our organization. We have senior leadership who are very well apprised of what's going on. And you think about what's in your organization and how to coordinate. Do you have COVID teams? I'm sure you do. What's compliance's responsibility? What's HR's responsibility? And again, our clinical folks and how we are supporting them. How do they communicate to you what their needs are? That coordination effort to make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes, that we're not wasting time when one person or one team can take accountability. So the coordination across the organization, across the teams is just so important. And as we wrap up, trying to kind of stay within our times, we have said this before, and I think as 2021 is upon us and there are more and more unknowns, I think it's really important to us, and I think to all of us, as we look specifically at the vaccine and the things that we're afraid of and the fears that people are faced with, it's important, I think, as healthcare professionals and leaders within our organizations to have that positive attitude that says, we can put it all back together. We can do this together, whether it's compliance and HR partnering, whether it's leadership within the organization, making sure that we understand the regulations, we understand those safety concerns. How are we transitioning? And truly, how are we taking care of the staff that are taking care of our patients? We absolutely believe at Provider Trust that we can do this together. We can overcome all of these challenges and all of these unknowns in 2021. We have absolute faith and confidence in each and every one of you, and we look forward to the opportunity this year to partner with you and find better ways to support you. And we wish you the very best and look forward to a really good, positive 2021.
That's incredibly well said, Donna. Just extending a thank you to everybody that joined us today. I mentioned this early on, but for sure, feel free to check out our content library at providertrust.com. It's at the top. Just scroll over to resources, and all of that stuff is free. So there's, I believe there's 700, over 700 assets in there that you can just go ahead, download, checklists, guides, all the things to make sure that you and your teams are really, really well educated and well prepared for anything that comes this year. So we're here. As always, we wanted to certainly extend a thank you. You guys are working so hard to keep us safe. We are eternally grateful for all that you do for each and every one of us. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. And then certainly, if we can ever be of service or ever help you, certainly just give us a buzz or visit our website and get in touch with us. We'd be happy to answer any questions that come up at all. Thanks so much, friends. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon. Take care.